We will not go down in the night.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the merciful, the beneficent. Welcome to the virtual Al-Quds event. I'm your host, Maria Abbas. This event is organized by Al-Quds Committee in New York. So just to tell you a little bit about the committee, it started in 2011. And since then, we have done an annual Al-Quds rally in New York with thousands and thousands of participants. This year, we had no choice but to do a virtual event because of the pandemic. So we have been, just to tell you a little bit about the committee, this is an independent ad hoc committee not affiliated with any domestic or foreign government entity, nor do we take any donations from any government agency, foreign or domestic. Al-Quds Day is an important day for humanity, started by Imam Khomeini. It is a day to express our solidarity with the oppressed people of Palestine. Quds was the first Qibla for Muslims towards which we prayed all over the world. It is a day to awaken our souls and to speak up against injustice in any capacity that we can. This past year has been especially important for us to speak up against the oppressed people of Palestine because of the COVID-19 pandemic and how it has ravaged through Palestine. So in addition to the atrocities that these people experience every day, as of today, there are over 700 confirmed COVID-19 cases in Palestine. There are over 18 deaths and 1,500 fatalities. These people don't have access to the vaccine. They are not readily tested, and they are experiencing unimaginable oppression, which is why it's very important for us to speak up against injustice and to speak up for our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Nathaniel Chase is representing the International Action Center.
Greetings on this Al-Quds Day from the International Action Center. My name is Nathaniel Chase. We cannot be together in person this year, but we are together in spirit, in solidarity, and in struggle. On Al-Quds Day, we say, we don't want no two states, we want 48. We don't want no two states, we want all of it. That's right, we want all of it, because all of it, from the river to the sea, is Palestine. Today, as we gather virtually with people around the world on Al-Quds, let us celebrate the extraordinary resistance of the Palestinian people, who for 72 years, since the settler colonial Zionist movement displaced 750,000 Palestinians to create the racist state of Israel, have fought back against genocide and the theft of their homeland. For 72 years, the Palestinian people have faced down the most powerful war machine ever assembled, that of U.S. imperialism and its puppet state Israel, and yet they remain unbowed. This resistance is terrifying to the U.S. and Israel because they know no matter how many bombs they drop, how many villages they destroy, how many protesters they shoot, they cannot break the spirit of the Palestinian people. Because they know that the global Palestinian solidarity movement, including the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, continues to gain strength. And because they know that the unbreakable will of the Palestinian people is an inspiration to billions across the planet to press forward in their own struggles for national liberation, to strike powerful blows against the dying beast of U.S. imperialism. So as we mourn the many martyrs of the Palestinian cause, let us also celebrate their resistance and chant for the whole world to hear. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you.
Joe Catrone went to Palestine's Gaza Strip in 2011, and he lived there through October 2014. During his time there, he joined popular protests along Israel's separation barrier, including many to mark Land Day, Nakba Day, and other Palestinian national commemorations. accompanied farmers and fishermen in Israeli enforced access restricted areas, supported campaigns in solidarity with Palestinian political prisoners, and assisted local organizations through editing and training. During Israel's military offensive in summer of 2014, he and other international volunteers established a constant presence in hospitals threatened by the bombardment and accompanied rescue efforts in conflict areas. His writing and photography from Palestine have appeared in 972 magazine, BBC, Electronic Intifada, Middle East Eye, the New York Times, Newsweek, and various other media. He's in Max Blumenthal and Don Cohen's new documentary, Killing Gaza, and was profiled by Ramzi Baroud in his latest book, The Last Earth, A Palestinian Story. He lives in New York and is the US coordinator of Samidun, Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network.
Good evening. On behalf of Samidun Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network and our comrades around the world, in the refugee camps, and under the Zionist occupation, I greet you all and thank the Al-Quds Committee for the opportunity to join you tonight. I also extend our particular salutes to the 4,450 Palestinian political prisoners who continue their struggle for liberation behind the bars of the Zionist occupation, including our comrades Ahmed Sadat, Khalida Jarrar, and Katam Safan, university students like Ilya Abu Hijla, Lion Kayed, Ruba Asi, and Shatha Al-Tawil, and the administrative detainees Imad Sawarka, Musab Al-Hur, and Allah Ramawi, all three of whom are on hunger strike against their military internment without charge or trial. This year, we commemorate the International Day of Al-Quds at a key point in the Palestinian national calendar, between Palestinian Prisoners' Day on April 17th and Nakba Day on May 15th, as well as at a moment of peak struggle for the occupied Palestinian city of Jerusalem, its people, and all who defend it against Zionist aggression, occupation, and ethnic cleansing. On April 25th, after over a week of fierce resistance by the city's Palestinian population, Israeli occupation forces withdrew from the Damascus Gate, taking with them the metal barriers they had erected to prevent gatherings by Palestinians during the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. This unequivocal victory came despite not only the brutal repression of the Israeli occupation forces, but also vicious attacks by thousands of illegal Israeli settlers who stormed the city's historic Palestinian neighborhoods, assaulting residents and vandalizing their property while chanting, "Death to Arabs." But of course, in a struggle like the Palestinian national movement, no victory, short of liberation and return, is ever complete. The Holy City still faces Zionist aggression, with 550 Palestinians and 28 families threatened by imminent ethnic cleansing and the seizure of their homes by illegal Israeli settlers in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. On February 16th, Mohammed Al-Kurd, a writer from one of these families, warned in an essay, "If the Zionists are successful in stealing Sheikh Jarrah, they will steal all of Jerusalem, as it is the opening heart of the old city, and Silwan, Batan al-Hawa, along with other areas, will fall like dominoes as well." Today, more than at most times, it is imperative for all of us who support the Palestinian struggle for justice to stand with the popular resistance in Sheikh Jarrah, across Jerusalem, and throughout the occupied West Bank and 1948 occupied Palestine, with the Palestinian prisoners movement, particularly its members on extended hunger strikes, and with the resistance, the final shield of Jerusalem, in Gaza, the citadel of the Palestinian national movement. Between May 15th and 22nd, to commemorate the 73rd anniversary of the Nakba, the ethnic cleansing of Palestine in 1948, Samadun Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network and our comrades in Masar Badil, the Alternative Path, will mobilize internationally as part of a week of Palestinian struggle. In the New York City area, along with Within Our Lifetime, American Muslims for Palestine, Al-Ouda New York, and others in the NY for Palestine Coalition, we will rally and march in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn on Saturday, May 15th, and in Paterson, New Jersey on Sunday, May 16th. These events, as well as many more around the world, will be listed on Samadun's website, samadun.net, and on our Facebook page and other social media. We urge all supporters of Palestine to join us in the streets, to raise your voices, and continue to show that Palestinians fighting Zionism and imperialism on the front lines do not stand alone. And we urge you to support the ongoing campaign to save Sheikh Jarrah by pressuring world governments and international institutions to act now to prevent this latest round of Israeli ethnic cleansing. Today we see the glimmer of progress in gestures, however limited and insufficient, against Israeli war crimes by entities like Human Rights Watch, the International Criminal Court, and even some Democratic members of the United States Congress. Of course, we know that HRW, the ICC, and the Democratic Party are no friends of Palestinians. Of course, we know that HRW, the ICC, and the Democratic Party are no friends of Palestinians. These small concessions show not their principle, as if they had any, but rather their weakness and the growing strength of the Palestinian national movement and its supporters. This strength has been hard-won through over a century of armed and popular struggle at the Palestinian, Arab, and international levels. And this tradition continues today, from the youth defending Jerusalem through pitched battles in its streets, to the armed brigades in Gaza, to each of us. Through the heroic resistance of the Palestinian people, with all our support and participation, Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. Thank you.
Joe Lombardo is a coordinator for the largest anti-war coalition in America, named United National Anti-War Coalition.
I would like to thank the Al-Quds Day Committee for once again expressing their solidarity with the people of Palestine and again asking UNAC to join with you. The United National Anti-War Coalition, UNAC, thoroughly debated the question of Palestine in our founding conference in 2010. A number of prior anti-war coalitions in the U.S. would not take a public stand in support of Palestine. But, as stated in UNAC's Statement of Unity, quote, "We support the right of the Palestinian people to determine their own future, and we oppose any U.S. aid to the colonial apartheid state of Israel. It is impossible to build an anti-war movement in the United States without supporting Palestinian rights and an end to U.S. complicity with Israel." In recent months, we have seen ever-increasing attacks on the Palestinian people. These have included continual bombing of Gaza and uprooting of people on the West Bank. Under the Trump administration, the U.S. moved its embassy to Jerusalem in a move that was meant to further humiliate the Palestinian people. During the month of Ramadan, Israel has further tried to make Palestinians unwelcomed in their own city. Gangs of right-wing Zionists attacked Palestinians leaving mosques during Ramadan, and the police have put up barricades to stop Palestinians from gathering. This has caused confrontations, including at the Damascus Gate in Jerusalem in the last couple of days. The Palestinian demonstrators were able to push back the Israeli police and have maintained access to the Damascus Gate. Besides the move of the embassy to Jerusalem, Trump also gave the green light to Israel to continue to annex and steal Palestinian lands. Now that Trump is out, the Biden administration has made it clear that they will continue unconditional support to the Israeli apartheid regime and has not moved to undo any of the policies of the Trump administration related to Israel. There will never be peace and justice in the world until Palestine is free. We must continue to express our solidarity and give all possible support and aid to the struggle of the Palestinian people. From the river to the sea, all of Palestine will be free. This is Joe Lombardo, coordinator of the United National Antiwar Coalition.
Sayed Istafanaqui is one of the original pioneers to help establish Islamic traditions in North America. In 1982, he founded Jafria Association of North America. As an elected president of Jafria Association of North America since 1984, he organized the first Muharram procession in the US, now the longest running procession in the Western Hemisphere and the largest Muslim parade in North America. He also played a pivotal role in funding and supplying medical aid to Haiti and flood-ravaged Pakistan.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Al-Quds Day is being observed on the last Friday of the month of Ramadan al-Mubarak all over the world. 42 years ago, it was held only in few cities. Now, alhamdulillah, it has become an international Quds Day and is observed in all major cities of the world. This day is observed to show our solidarity to the people of Palestine who are suffering for more than 70 years at the hand of the Zionist regime and the most racist regime in the world. The land was taken away and their livelihood was also snatched from them, and they're being tortured day and night. The men, youth, women, and the children are being killed mercilessly without any reason. And still, every day, they are being humiliated and the land is taken away bit by bit. Moreover, there are no economic opportunities left in the Palestine, and the people have to go to look for a job, and they have to go through a series of hardship to get a permission to look for a job. Even they live in Palestine, but they cannot move freely in the area. They must either get a permit or get okayed with the Israeli army to move around. And sometime it happened even in the medical emergency. They have to do the same procedure. A lot of people, Palestinian people, are being give the life away before they find any hospital. They are living in a box because there's blockade on the ground and on the sea. No humanitarian aid can get there, and no one can help them. It is the most densely populated area of the world, and they don't have any facilities of a city. There is no running water, there is no sewage system, and there is no education system, and there is no economic welfare of the community. In short, they are living in an open air jail. Nowadays, even when they're living in such a small area, their houses are being bulldozed by the torturist army of Israel. Sometimes they give the notices, sometimes they even don't bother to let them know and bulldoze their houses. They cannot even have a chance to get their belonging out, and if some old person cannot come out of the house on a specific time, and he is also been killed and mowed down by these bulldozers. Remember, even some activists from America went there, and one of the woman named Rachel Corrie stood in front of the tank to protect the house of a Palestinian. But this animalistic behavior of the army was that they mowed down her and killed her, and they mowed down the house. Every day they're building more and more settlements which are against the resolution of the United Nations. But no nation stands up for the Palestinian, and no one there to stop Israel from building these settlements. All the imperial empires of the world, those who claim themselves as the freedom lover and work, but in this case they are part of that regime which is killing and destroying Palestinian people in their own land. And it is sad to report that even the governments, Islamic Muslim governments rather, of Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, they work as a proxy for Israel, and they are the tools, and they are one of the causes this Palestinian going through. They never stood for them and never asked Israel to stop killing innocent people of Palestine. Every citizen of the Palestine has a dream. They are full of sorrow. They have desperation, but they have aspiration too. And they are looking and hoping for a free nation. And we hope one day Palestinians will be free. A free land, a free nation, a nation with own integrity. And they will have a wonderful time as any other nations do. Right now, they are not even allowed to have their own army, their own defense forces, and they are being bombed whenever the regime of Israel, the racist, the Zionist regime want to attack them. And their proxy, like Saudi Arabia, is also bombing helpless, defenseless Yemeni people, not even sparing the schools and the hospitals and any welfare building which they see, they attack them. The day is not far when, like the apartheid government of South Africa, the government of Israel will have to liberate Palestinian, and inshallah this day is not far, and they will be a free nation, and they will enjoy the freedom which they are seeking for a long time. Thank you.
Nerdeen Kiswani is representing Within Our Lifetime, which is a Palestinian-led community organization that has been building the movement for Palestine in New York City since 2015.
My name is Nerdeen Kiswani, and I'm the chair and founder of Within Our Lifetime United for Palestine. I'm excited to share this video with the organizers of Al-Quds Day. While we wish we could have been chanting in the streets as we always do, we know that we will continue to fight for and defend Al-Quds in Jerusalem, now and always. Recently in Al-Quds, Palestinians have had to defend themselves from Zionist mobs chanting death to Arabs who are trying to take over Palestinian homes and prevent Palestinians from accessing one of our most sacred holy sites, Al-Aqsa. They were backed by the full weight of the occupation, of course, who barricaded the Damascus Gate and prevented Palestinians from freely worshiping and praying during the holiest month, Ramadan. But thanks to the actions of Palestinian youth, this injustice turned into a celebration. The removal of the barricades from the Damascus Gate in Jerusalem will be the first of many wins to come for Palestinians. Palestinian youth were able to taste the fruits of their resistance in just days as the occupation scrambled before they were forced to stand down. The brave youth of Jerusalem, our Palestinian youth, know that their actions and resilience are being celebrated and cherished across the world. While Zionists have continued to completely humiliate themselves for their violent genocidal actions, from chanting death to Arabs to attacking Muslims and Palestinians during the holiest month of Ramadan, at the holiest site of Islam in Palestine, Al-Aqsa. This teaches us that there is no going back. Resistance is the only way that we have ever been able to gain wins for Palestinians and towards the liberation of Palestine. We know this, we see this, and we will never stop fighting. We will never go back, only forward, until liberation within our lifetime. We know that Israel's days are numbered. This is why within our lifetime, we have the hourglass logo. Most recently, Human Rights Watch designated Israel as having an apartheid system, while the International Criminal Court is investigating it for war crimes. But we already knew this. We don't need NGOs to tell us this years too late. We know that Palestinians will be freed, not because of these reports in court cases, which only catch up to what's happening on the ground much, much later. We know it will be free because our youth are resisting. We're resisting not only in Jerusalem, but also in Gaza, the West Bank, 48 refugee camps, and around the world, right here in Brooklyn, New York. This is part of resistance. So please continue to fight for Palestine, continue to defend Jerusalem, because this cannot stop. And we will not stop until every single inch of Palestinian land is liberated and until every single Palestinian can go back to their original homeland and can either go to Al-Aqsa to pray or visit any other holy sites that they wish, whether they are Muslim, Christian, or whatever their background is. We just know that the liberation of Palestine must happen for all Palestinian people and will only happen through resistance and the right of return and full reparations for all Palestinians. Thank you for listening, and hopefully we will continue to fight in the streets alongside with you, resisting and demanding freedom for Palestine, freedom for Al-Quds, and freedom for all oppressed people everywhere. Thank you.
Mohammed Nabulsi is a Palestinian American lawyer and an activist. He has been very active with the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement, and he is currently a coordinator at the Palestinian Youth Movement.
Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mohammed Nabulsi and I'm an organizer with the Palestinian Youth Movement. I'm the Vice General Coordinator and I'm also involved in its Houston chapter. Ramadan Mubarak and 1,000 salutations to you all. Thank you so much for hosting us and thank you so much for convening this event and the protests that have taken place all across the globe. Al-Quds Day is an important day for us as Palestinians because it marks a day in which every supporter of justice, every supporter of Palestine comes together and voices our support for the holy city of Jerusalem, the eternal capital of Palestine. This year's Al-Quds Day could not come at a more pressing moment. As you all have probably followed from the news, the Zionist colonial regime has continued in its attacks on Palestinians of Jerusalem. It has continued in its projects of ethnic cleansing of the neighborhoods of Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan, and have continued to attack Palestinians' ability to engage in religious observation, which is also an attack on Al-Aqsa and the worshippers during this holy month of Ramadan, as well as an attack on our Palestinian Christians, brothers and sisters, as they celebrate Easter this year. These attacks represent an affront not just to the Palestinian struggle and to the Palestinian people, but an affront to all those who support justice and liberation. We must continue to resist these efforts of ethnic cleansing. We must continue to resist Zionist, fascist gangs and militias who parade themselves through the streets of Palestine and in Jerusalem chanting death to Arabs. These people reflect what true Zionism is, a project that is predicated on the death and destruction of Palestinians in Palestine and outside of Palestine. So on this Al-Quds Day, I call on everyone in participation to renew our commitment to supporting the Palestinian struggle and to supporting the plight of our Palestinian brothers and sisters in Jerusalem. We must also continue to speak out on the role of the US government and its complicity and perpetration of violence and injustice, not just against the Palestinian people, but of the peoples of the whole world. The poor, the dispossessed, the working class, those in the global south who continue to resist colonialism and imperialism. We must speak out and speak for these people. And so, thank you again for hosting us. Ramadan Mubarak and 1,000 salutations to you all from the PYM. I want to let everyone know next Saturday, May 15th, is Nakba Day. It is the day in which Palestinians commemorate a Nakba, or the catastrophe that resulted in the ethnic cleansing of close to 1 million of our compatriots in Palestine in 1948. This Nakba Day, we will also be hosting protests across the US and Canada and really all over the globe. If your locale is hosting a protest or an event or a webinar, we call on you to participate. Be on the lookout for a statement calling for involvement in these different protests as well. Thank you again, and we hope next Al-Quds Day we will join you in person.
Al-Quds Committee New York would like to pay tribute to a fallen hero who passed away this year. His name is Ramsey Clark. He was the founder of International Action Center, IAC. He founded that organization in 1992. So just to tell you a little bit about him, he was the 66th U.S. Attorney General from 1966 to 1969. He was a lawyer in New York City. His defense of the Iranian Revolution and his opposition to the U.S. wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Libya, and his visits to these countries when they were under attack was historic. He is someone who supported Al-Quds for years. He was a speaker in 2014. So keeping that in mind, our next speaker is actually the current co-director of International Action Center, and she also represents the Workers' World Party. She is a writer of several books. She has written on several topics. She's an activist. She has supported Al-Quds for years. She has been a speaker at Al-Quds for years. And she also frequently writes for Workers' World newspaper. Her name is Sara Flounders.
Resistance is justified when people are occupied. This is Sara Flounders with greetings from Workers' World Party on Al-Quds Day. Al-Quds Day, Jerusalem Day, always the last Friday of Ramadan, is an international day acknowledged around the world. Millions of people in different conditions and forms act together on this day in solidarity with Palestine and with Palestinian resistance. And this resistance has continued despite impossible odds, desperate conditions, starvation, mass imprisonment and killings, land expropriations, aerial bombardments. Palestine reminds us again and again of the capacity of a whole people to organize, to mobilize, to resist for decades and generations until liberation can be won. Palestine is a resistance that inspires every country facing US sanctions, imperialist wars, invasions, coups, and occupations. All around the world, in Yemen, in Iraq, Syria, Venezuela, and Cuba, and North Korea, movements that are facing seemingly impossible odds and overwhelming US military power also know it's possible to resist because Gaza has survived and continues to fight. The US empire and the Zionist state of Israel won't survive. Israel today can't last without US military aid, US diplomatic cover, political and economic power, arming it, and keeping that colonial apartheid outpost alive. But Zionism, despite every high-tech weapon, drone and tank, can't defeat Gaza. Surrounded, isolated, impoverished Gaza. The Zionists have failed again and again to defeat or silence the Palestinian struggle. Organized people's resistance is the most powerful weapon. Consciousness, mobilization of a whole people is more powerful than any weapon the US can provide or that Israel can deploy. Here in the US, we see the constant killing of Black and brown people by cops. The police, it's so comparable to the occupation of Palestine. They're not separate issues. They're in fact one issue perpetrated by the US war machine. More than 1,000 people a year killed by police here in the US. There's the largest prison population in the world right here. So there are no walls in the workers' struggle. It's truly one global struggle. And our struggle in the US against racist cops, against anti-immigrant ICE agents, against cutbacks affecting oppressed people, is stronger when we declare that Palestine is also our struggle. Today, on Al-Quds Day, here and around the world, we stand with Palestine, we join with resistance. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will win.
Bill Doris was the Northeast Regional Organizer for the Viva Palestina Caravan to Gaza in 2009. He has been a coordinator of Palestina solidarity activities in New York area since 1967. He is representing La Lucha, the struggle.
On this International Day of Al-Quds, we stand in solidarity with the heroic people of Palestine in their century-long battle to defend their rights, their land, and their very existence against a twisted racist colonial project conceived in the imperial capitals of Europe in the 19th century and funded since 1948 by Washington and by Wall Street. We stand with them in their struggle for independence and return, for the right of every Palestinian to live in peace and freedom in every inch of the land of Palestine. We honor Rihab Zaur and all the martyrs of that struggle, who will be remembered forever in a free Palestine. Today, Al-Quds itself, Jerusalem, is the front line of that battle. Her people are fighting to defend their ancient city from Ku Klux Klan-like lynch mobs of hate-filled settlers, many from the United States and Europe, who chant death to Arabs and we'll burn your village down. The media call these right-wing Zionist gangs extremists, but their slogans express in words what the racist Israeli state has done in deeds since it was created in 1948, created by Western powers on the stolen soil of Palestine. And they are backed by the full might of the US armed Israeli state, which now seeks to evict Palestinian families in East Jerusalem from homes they have lived in for centuries. The Zionist dream, the very goal of the Israeli state's existence, is the eradication of the Palestinian people from their homeland. For this goal, they will never achieve. This year, the Day of Quds falls little more than a week before the 73rd anniversary of what Palestinian people call a Nakba, the catastrophe of exile and occupation that continues to this day. 73 years ago, the majority of the people of Palestine were expelled from their homes. Thousands were executed in cold blood for the crime of being born Palestinian. Entire cities were depopulated, and 530 villages were destroyed, so that a Western settler state could be erected on their ruins. Today, that state, which declared its so-called independence on May 15, 1948, directly occupies 85% of the land of Palestine and part of Syria. Today, Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem live under a daily reign of terror from Israeli troops and settlers, who murder and kidnap them and destroy their crops and animals in an effort to drive them from their land. Every year, more Palestinian families see their homes demolished or stolen by settlers from the United States. In the Gaza Strip, nearly 2 million Palestinians live under a constant state of siege, locked inside a giant open-air prison where water is not fit to drink, electricity runs a few hours a day, and people die from lack of medicine. They are subject to regular bombardment by the latest weapons in Israel's US-supplied arsenal. On any given day, nearly 5,000 Palestinians, including hundreds of children, languish in Israeli prisons, many of them under so-called administrative detention, denied the right to trial. The very existence of Israel has been a 73-year-long war against the people of Palestine and the neighboring countries of Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and now Yemen and Iran. For 73 years, this war has been subsidized by the United States, which provides an endless flow of arms and dollars to the settler fortress in Palestine. Last May 22nd, while millions of workers in the United States worried about their next meal, the U.S. Senate Foreign Aid Committee approved a new $38 billion aid package, arms package, to Israel. For the corporate agents in Washington, D.C., the racist state of Israel is a critical instrument in their war machine, a weapon in their bloody quest to keep the wealth of the world flowing into the coffers of the U.S. corporate ruling class. Israel is an apartheid state, but it is also part of a global system of apartheid that divides the world into rich and poor. It is an enforcer in a giant protection racket run from Washington, D.C., that has extorted trillions of dollars from the oil-rich countries of the region. Keeping those petrodollars flowing has been the object of U.S. intervention in West Asia and North Africa since 1945. Regimes like the monarchies of the Arabian Peninsula, like the Saudi family, that pay their oil revenues in tribute to U.S. banks, oil companies, and the military financial complex, get protection. Those that refuse get attacked. That's why Israel attacked Egypt and Syria in 1967. That's why it aids the United States in covert war against Syria and Yemen and Iran today. Meanwhile, the Chevron Corporation plans to use gas stolen from Palestinian waters in its battle for the European energy market. Let us also be clear, the racist state in Palestine in no way represents or benefits the vast majority of Jewish people on this planet, many of whom stand in solidarity with Palestine. It only serves the interests of an elite ruling class of bankers and billionaires, very few of whom are Jewish. 40 years ago, Reagan's Secretary of State, Alexander Haig, called Israel the largest U.S. aircraft carrier in the world and the only one that can't be sunk. In 2017, aboard the USS George Bush, moored in Palestinian waters, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said, "A few miles from here, there is another aircraft carrier for our common civilization. It's called the State of Israel." When Netanyahu speaks of common civilization, he speaks of a commonality of racism, oppression, and dispossession. The scenes of Israeli occupation forces beating and brutalizing Palestinians in Jerusalem this week are so much like the scenes of racist police violence against Black and Brown and Native people in the United States. Many U.S. police forces have joint training programs with Israeli occupation forces in Palestine. NYPD even has a branch in the Israeli settlement of Kfar Saba. But today, racist oppression is foundering on the rock of people's resistance, from Black America to Palestine. 73 years of murder, terror, and repression have not broken the resistance of the Palestinian people, their will, their determination to live free on their own land. We see that today in the streets of Jerusalem and Nablus and Bethlehem, where the occupation's genocidal schemes are provoking a new intifada. And the world has changed much since 1948 and 1988. In the US, politicians claim they will end forever wars and endless wars. It will take a fight by the people to make that really happen. We need the monstrous Pentagon war machine off our backs. But you cannot end endless war without ending the endless flow of US dollars and arms to the Israeli occupation state. This week of May 15th to the 22nd has been called an International Week of Action for the liberation of all Palestinians. Here in the United States, we need to be on the streets in those days. In New York and New Jersey, New York for Palestine has called rallies in Brooklyn and Patterson on May 15th and May 16th. If you're in the area, please join us on those days. We need to fight for human needs, not racist wars. End all aid to the racist state of Israel. Free Palestine from the river to the sea.
We have amazing speakers for you who have dedicated their lives to this cause. Cyrus McGoldrick is an artist and community activist and American Muslim of Iranian and Irish descent. He graduated from Columbia University. He was the civil rights manager at the New York chapter of Council on American Islamic Relations. He serves on the board of directors for Getting Out and Staying Out, which is a program dedicated to helping young men coming out of prison and to stay out of prison. He is also an independent world and hip hop musician, specializing in voice, beats, and live instruments. He's a voice for Islam, human rights, and cultural understanding, featured in hundreds of concerts, rallies, panels, and local, national, and international media.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Greetings of peace to friends and family in New York and around the world. It's a great blessing to live to meet another Ramadan and to hopefully to reach its end. And to gather on this last Friday, as we have for so many years, on the International Day of Al-Quds, raising the call, recommitting ourselves to the liberation of Palestine from Zionist stranglehold. I do miss the gathering, the real gathering in Times Square, the chance to rally and raise our voices with family and friends. Under the circumstances, of course, I can appreciate the different opportunity that we have now to join you from across the world. I'm sitting here in Istanbul. Because of that, I've not been able to join you for several years. As we speak now, as I record this, our sisters and brothers in Palestine are struggling again, as they do almost every Ramadan, it seems, and many days in between, struggling against their oppressors with courage and with commitment. And their struggle, it's a reminder to me, as it always is, to recommit to a struggle that we too often neglect, that we too often get distracted from. Now, I know most of you are committed to this work. I know many of you understand the situation and know what we have to do. And so for us, it's just a reminder to get back to work. Some of you listening may not have really been able to connect to the struggle for the liberation of Palestine. And so perhaps I can offer a very simple message, that the colonization of Muslim lands after World War I was a great loss. And the granting of Palestine to the Zionists by the British and other Western powers was illegitimate in total. And the treatment of the people of Palestine by the Zionist regime is oppressive and wrong, amounting to apartheid. And so we can say with full confidence that the state of Israel has no right to exist as it does, that Muslims and people of faith and conscience must join together and commit to its full dismantling, and that there will be no peace, really, until it is gone. The struggle of the people of Palestine has always been in parallel and in collaboration with the struggles of oppressed people around the world, in the Americas, in Africa, in Asia, Europe, and of course the heart of the Muslim world. Palestinians have always been aware of and supportive of those struggles, and we appreciate it. And so no matter where we find our battlefront, we must keep solidarity with the Palestinian people in our hearts and in our strategies. So I want to thank the organizers of this gathering and gatherings around the world on the same day, who dedicate themselves year after year to its success. And I want to thank each and every one of you for listening, for joining, for committing yourself, for praying, for supporting this cause, with whatever means you're able. I respect you and I appreciate you and I love you as your brother, and I hope that we can live in a way that is pleasing to Allah and loved by Allah with faith and with dedication. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Yusuf Trombly is an educator and an artist based out of Boston.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon all of you. Ramadan Mubarak. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon on the annual International Day of Al-Quds, in which we gather in solidarity with not only the people of Palestine in particular, but also the Mustadafin, all the oppressed people of the world. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Just like Gideon's fight against the Midianites, we pray for 3:13 and begin in the right as fighter take flight, like Saul and his forces. Tested out the water, we all become corpses, orphans. We're like a lost humanity, children separated from the holy family tree. If locked up like Hajj Malcolm exile, pray like Daniel, Babylonian exile. Mother of Moses, next to the Nile, with the faith of one God, is the Exodus child. You gotta travel the land before you battle a man, because most of the oppressors just scattered and ran. They got battering rams, they mowing down the innocent. Read Rachel Corey's story on the internet, or better yet, Tamir Rice and Michael Brown. So much fitna that I forgot to write it down. We occupy both holy lands, north and south, just Jerusalem and Mecca from the horse's mouth. And of course, this is all about race and religion. Imagine having no water in the place that you live in. They call them settlements, but they're really colonies. Actual facts, a terrorist is what you calling me. While you were talking to Sean and Nick Cannon, they stayed killing kids with bombs and big cannons. Peace to Griff, serious rhymes, serious minds, studying the service and signs like the Furious Five. I got a message, Melly Mel. My man Bobby Blue probably knew very well, who trained the officers in Minnesota. Word to Mr. Chuck, by the time we got to Arizona, they killed a Muslim by the bathroom stall. In Marcus' religion, he was calling on Allah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Palestinian scarf, spitting in the park, rhyme for the deaf, dumb and blind, living in the dark. Triple stage like Sadat X, teaching in the classroom, never mix a lot next. Yes, build with kids who got the chins on them, say they gotta straighten up before they get the chains on them. Brainstorming, think of ideas before the C-cycle powers come and I damn it. Carpe diem when we season the day, I'm on my 5 daily ritual. Needs to pray just to ease the pain, no Tylenol. I told you all I drove to Grove Hall just to buy a final call. They want a wall on the Mexican border. Got my ox all studying executive order 9066. Hate crimes are on the rise. You know the science is a Zionist design. Free Palestine. Jesus never died a physical death. Rabbis and Romans post a visible threat. Visit the rest. We can mix a lot. Break fast. Like my brother said, the mustaqeen is a straight path. Got my daughter memorize the Quran. Eyes on the prize, trying to rise at dawn. Lies in a song, make the music haram. If it ain't halal style, then you're using it wrong. A lot of so-called scholars are misleading the youth. They get paid petrodollars for concealing the truth. Saudi money, mad bloody. The weapons they shoot can't dispute with the hawk that we drop in the booth. I'm rocking the coof, making sure my enemies hear me. Make dua every day for the Yemenis and Kashmiris. Paying yearly taxes to the state, but Hamanized leader. You can miss me with the hate. Hold up. Certain evil people from previous scriptures blaspheme the prophet with devious pictures, cursed in the verse by Dawood and Isa. The Quran is a powerful teacher. Don't jump the fence because the Trump or Pence. We do dawah. MC Ren, shock of the hour. You know Allah told us it's a grievous thing. Worldwide genocide, it was plain to see. Got Hussein on my brain from Bahrain to Yemen. No claim to fame, just aiming towards Mecca. Praying for the better, me and my alliance. Answer the enemies with Zachariah silence. Jeremiah writings, 46:10. The day of vengeance. Pay attention to the gems, not the tone of my skin. I'm about to go in. Word to Daddy Grace, hip hop for grown men. Let knowledge be born. Biological wars, the brains of Shaitan in the college's dorms, diabolical forms. Human devils are corrupting the creation of Allah. True rebels. They went from slicing the air, the cattle, now they're cracking the atom for nuclear battle. Rhymes like these don't put your mind at ease. They use science degrees and made Lyme disease, but some are blind to see the facts so well. There's a place in Maryland called the Anthrax Hotel. It's like we're living in a prison planet, the way the devil planned it. We doing max in a cell. From pandemics to quarantines to economic sanctions from the war machines. I'm seeing horror scenes, martial law, but we watching the empire fall. Mashallah. They're knocking down tombs and graves to exhume the remains. From now to doomsday will say Yah Hussein, but who's to say if our hearts are really with him? Up against the sword, oh Lord, impart wisdom and Kufa, Iraq. They turned their back, but did we learn from that? Did we discern the facts, or did we just wear black and beat our chests? But keep skipping Juma while the is oppressed. It's more than just tears for 10 days a year. A 14 centuries essentially in fear. Yeah, Yazid died and went to hell. They're alive and well. We just cry and yell. They try to sell the American dream. Let us keep the ritual, strip us of the zine. Zain al-Abidin and Zainab the Queen taught us about the tragedy, but what does it mean? Mankind's a combination of soul and soil. War between the nations for gold and oil. So to the victor goes the spoils. But we're all worm food, dude, is so ill. Cannibals in Syria are organ eating. Kings are playing God like Morgan Freeman. And it's more than believing. I'm seeing the truth. From China to Myanmar, the season to shoot. Got chapter and verse in the banks of my mental. Fame of Abraham near the sanctified temple. It all started there in Arid Valley. Now they treat the Muslims and the Arabs badly with the bastard fallacy. Blasphemy against Ismail to the son of Al-Askari. As for me, I don't want the drama. Real talk, Obama with a bomb, Wakanda. Armageddon, song for Yemen. The answer of Allah still strong as ever through the famine. Economy, the water in the desert is contaminated by bombs and weapons. A Saudi, but God got a master plan. Destroy the castles they built on the sand. MBS wants to be a warrior prince, just a clown for Trump and a whore for Pence. I'm more than convinced. Internet, Yahoo, Facebook has got y'all shook. The Netanyahu, how you feel about the deal of the century? The UN's a joke and folks are dead mentally. But Yemenis stay praying to Allah like Sayyid Shubadar on the day of Ashura. Hussein a Kabbalah, man, the time flies. Years of genocide, you'll turn the blind eye. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Before I go, I'd be remiss not to make mention of a man who made perhaps the greatest sacrifice for this cause, the International Day of Al-Quds, and that's the man you see behind me, whose picture you see behind me, Alama Zakzaky of Nigeria, who's constantly in our du'as. We spit serious raps for Syria and Iraq, but it's sad we couldn't find Nigeria on the map. We never see hearing the facts from the MSM, CNBC, Fox, and CNN. I don't see an end in sight. The Shiite plight, the last days mass graves, it won't be alright until we fight, struggle, and read the blueprint of Sheikh Zakzaky and his peaceful movement since the 1980s. Done for the law, even sacrificed 6 of his sons for the cause. Shaheed, who bleed on the African sand, that even try to kill his wife, the better half of a man. If it happens again, no joke, it's on, cause the government no different than Boko Haram. I slow flow the song, and the Prophet and his family get the blessings upon. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Free Palestine.
Suhaila Zakzaky is the daughter of Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaky, who is the leader of the Islamic movement in Nigeria. Suhaila Zakzaky is an activist and a student. So just to tell you a little bit about the Islamic movement of Nigeria, it started in the 1970s. And it started as a student movement that eventually grew into 20 million people across Nigeria. And the movement advocates for social, economic, and political justice for all Nigerians, according to the Islamic teachings, and provides medical and education services to many deprived Nigerians. Its leadership has always been very critical of the various Nigerian regime and governments. In 2014, during an Al-Quds rally, 35 participants of the Al-Quds rally were killed by the Nigerian government. This was in Zaria in Nigeria. Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaky was arrested during the Zaria massacre, and his sons were martyred. Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaky is an example for us when it comes to fighting for oppression.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I would like to start by thanking the organizers of this event for inviting me to join and enabling me to contribute to it. I'm happy that we are able to commemorate the Quds Day this year, and hopefully we will continue to do so until Palestine is free, inshallah. I wanted to speak a little bit about the support for Palestine in Nigeria. The idea of supporting Palestine is in the very foundation of the Islamic movement in Nigeria. And from the very beginning, my father has always made his position very clear on this issue. He views the issue of Palestine as a responsibility on all of us to do the very best that we can to support Palestine. He emphasizes the importance of support for Palestine as central to the issue of justice in our world today. Since the very first year after the establishment of Al-Quds Day by Imam Khomeini in 1979, it has been observed in Nigeria, mainly by the Islamic movement in Nigeria. What started with only a handful of people, mostly students at the time, continues to gradually grow year after year, and to the point now that we are seeing millions of people across the country observing it in over 30 cities. This growth in the observance of Quds Day and also the show of solidarity for Palestine continues to happen despite the fact that many successive Nigerian governments continue to crack down on the Quds Day observances and also on the Islamic movement generally. Over the years, on numerous occasions, the authorities would regularly harass organizers and even attack various processions and events, try to intimidate people to deter them from going to such things. In a lot of cases, assaulting people, arresting people, even killing people. In 2014, perhaps one of the most known incidences of the Nigerian government attacking the Quds Day procession, where the Nigerian armies attacked the procession, killing 34 people and injuring so many others. Amongst the 34 that were killed were 3 of my brothers. Even though this particular attack and the killing of people wasn't the first one, it wasn't the first time that this happened. In 2009, a few years prior to that, there was an attack on the procession in Zaria as well, where 4 people were killed and many were injured. And a few years before that as well, other attacks happened in other cities, like in Kano in 2003, to name, well, a few of the attacks that happened. So despite all of these attacks, despite all of the efforts of the authorities to deter people, to intimidate people from participating in these things, the participation only continues to grow. Instead of having the effect that they're hoping for, it's having the opposite effect. And almost without fail, every year that actually attacks do occur, the following year there would be much more participation in the processions. The Quds Day in Nigeria is perhaps the largest that occurs in anywhere in the world, only second to Iran, the processions in Iran. And despite the continuous crackdown, as I mentioned, these Quds Day events and processions continue to happen. When we look at the, these incidences that happened, the killing of our family members and friends or other people, it seems like something that pales in comparison to what we observe when we look at, let's say, the people of Palestine who have been enduring a lot, who have been going through a lot of, oppression and injustice for the past decades. And this kind of when you put it in perspective, it feels like something that only makes it more of an inspiring situation for us to continue to do that. Especially because, well, we are not doing anything wrong for standing up for Palestine or for speaking about Palestine or for engaging in, well, generally all the other activities of the Islamic movement as well. We will hopefully continue to do these things, and hopefully, no matter the extent of the crackdowns of the government, nothing will deter our support for Palestine. And as my father always says, the issue of, well, Israel is basically something that is built on oppression and terrorism, and it is bound to crumble. It's just a matter of time. And we know that. We know that all things built on, oppression and terrorism will eventually fall. And with this hope, we continue to show our support for Palestine. Thank you very much for allowing me to share this little message. I hope that in the coming years we will be able to continue to do this, and we will inshallah soon see a free Palestine. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
I want to request you all to please recite a Surah Fatiha for all our fallen heroes, for all our martyrs who have died defending innocent people and fighting imperial forces. Dr. Ali Raza Musfi is a cardiologist and an activist. He is heavily involved with a group called Muslims United for Justice, which I am also part of, and I'm very fortunate to be part of it. He has traveled all over the world, volunteering for a medical-based organization called Imamiya Medics. He is involved with various different organizations doing activism, and he's a proud father of 2 boys and a little girl.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Israel is being lauded for its excellent COVID response, as it is leading the world in the total number of doses per head of the household. Around 85% of its population, which is over 16 years of age, has either been vaccinated or has some form of immunity, perhaps from an infection. Fascinating numbers, aren't they? How did they do this? First, procurement. While the world was reeling and trying to get any number of doses they could, including the United States, Israel was able to procure a huge supply from both Pfizer and Moderna. As of today, those 2 companies are still supplying thousands of doses per week to the state of Israel. Why this special status? Anyone surprised? Secondly, distribution. The main reason Israel was able to distribute it and give this vaccination to this entire population is because of its excellent healthcare system. The irony is that the American taxpayer that is paying for that healthcare system is told on a daily basis that we cannot afford to have a similar healthcare system in the United States for ourselves. Yes, the whole world should applaud Israel, and we would too, if it weren't for the fact that the Palestinians could have shared a little bit of the success themselves. Israel did not initially offer the vaccine to the Palestinians until early March, and that too to those Palestinians who were coming over to Israel to work, or those who were the Israeli in the West Bank settlements. So it wasn't that they were offering to all Palestinians. They were offering to those Palestinians who would infect them. How charitable and noble indeed. West Bank and Gaza are home to an estimated 5 million people and have a fragile healthcare system. Since early February, there has been a sharp rise in both infections as well as deaths. Approximately 75% of the cases that are now being sampled in West Bank are the variant which originated in the United Kingdom and is called the B117, a variant which is 50% more infectious and deadly than the previous ones. If you thought the conditions in West Bank were bad, the situation in Gaza is horrendous and devastating. The blockade of 13 years means that many of the inhabitants of Gaza are suffering on a daily basis. Many of the treatments in Gaza are unavailable, and the local healthcare staff do not have the up-to-date knowledge to administer them, even if they were. There are only 87 intensive care unit beds with ventilators for nearly 2 million people. And there's a paucity of personal protective equipment or PPE. This is compounded by the fact that there's a poor healthcare conditions and a water supply and electricity, which is controlled by Israel. There's a rampant poverty and a very high population density in a tiny strip of land. If well-equipped healthcare systems around the world in developed countries like the United States suffered during this pandemic and found handling of the crisis almost impossible, imagine the scene in Palestine. What can be done? Well, Israel should lift its closure of the Gaza Strip to enable proper functioning of Gaza's healthcare system and other essential services in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. Secondly, only 2% of the Palestinians have been vaccinated, and this must change in a hurry and dramatically. United Nations has said that it is Israel's responsibility to provide equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines for the Palestinians in Gaza and in West Bank. It also said that the differential access is, quote, morally and legally unacceptable under international law as laid out in the Geneva Convention on the Regulation of Occupied Territories, unquote. Then again, this is Israel we're talking about, whose crimes have been washed away by accusing the accusers of being anti-Semitic. Remember what happened to Saturday Night Live's Michael Shea, who simply was telling the truth when he said, jokingly, in quotes, Israel has vaccinated the Jewish half, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, This is COVID-19 apartheid, and it has to end and end right now. Thank you very much for your attention.
Our speaker from Notori Karta is Rabbi Feldman. Just to tell you a little bit about Notori Karta, it is a Jewish group opposed to the establishment of the Zionist regime. It retains all opposition to the existence of the so-called State of Israel. The name was given to a group of Orthodox Jews in Jerusalem who refused and still refuse to recognize the existence or authority of the so-called State of Israel, and made and still make a point of publicly demonstrating their position, the position of the Torah, and the authentic, unadulterated Judaism.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. I want to thank the Al-Quds Day Committee in New York City for inviting me to this important online conference, and all the participants for listening. Unfortunately, this year, we are still facing the coronavirus pandemic and cannot go out into the street to meet you all personally as in past years. But I want to thank the Almighty for giving us the opportunity to do this virtual meeting. We can't allow the cruel occupation of Palestine to continue. Despite the current limitations, we need to continue to spread awareness of this issue. We are here to express solidarity with the Palestinian people after 73 years since the Palestinian Nakba, the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. The Palestinian people were killed, tortured, and displaced, forced to live in refugee camps outside their homeland. Those remaining in Palestine are fenced into crowded areas as their land is annexed and confiscated bit by bit every year. They are stateless people deprived of the right to vote in their own country. The occupation continues, and unfortunately it is constantly getting worse. Especially we Jews feel that it is important to show our solidarity with Palestine and opposition to the existence of the State of Israel and to all Zionist crimes, because they are unfortunately being done, supposedly, in our name and in the name of our religion. The Zionist movement is misusing the name of Jews and the religion of Judaism as a cover-up to justify their crimes and win support. They use the accusation of anti-Semitism to silence those who speak up against them. They claim that their state is a Jewish state, and based on this, they pressure countries to expand the definition of anti-Semitism to include criticism of their state. But actually, there is nothing Jewish about their state, and speaking out against its crimes is fair. The Zionist ideology to build a homeland for Jews is against the Jewish religion, which teaches that Jews are in a divinely decreed exile and may not end it with human power, and Jews may not fight against other nations. In addition, all the crimes that they commit against the Palestinian people are forbidden by the Torah, which commands us, "Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill." The entire Zionist movement is in contradiction to the Jewish religion. Its leaders don't keep the Torah's commandments. They just use the Torah when it is convenient for them to claim rights to the land and to rationalize their crimes against God and against humanity. They say they have a right to the land because the Torah says that the Almighty promised the Holy Land for the Jewish people. But they pick and choose what to quote from the Bible. The Torah also says that God sent the Jewish people into exile and forbade them to return en masse on their own. Not only do they not keep the Torah personally, but they have always worked to uproot and destroy the observance of Judaism and the Jewish faith. They invade Jewish schools and order them not to teach children the Jewish faith. They grab away boys and girls from our community, harass them, and force them into the army. They seek to transform Judaism from a religion into a nationalism, where to be a Jew, one need not believe in God, one need not believe in the Torah, one need not keep Jewish law. All one needs to be is a patriotic citizen of the political state of Israel, and fight in its army. They want to take the people of the book and turn them into the people of the sword. With their propaganda, they claim that their state is necessary for the peace and security of Jews. They want the world to forget that actually Jews and Palestinians once lived together in peace, and in fact throughout the Arab and Muslim world, Jews once lived side by side with their neighbors in peace and mutual respect. The older among us still remember those days. Actually, their state has brought not security, but bloodshed. Thousands of Jews, Palestinians, and other Arabs lost their lives due to the conflicts they started. Their nationalism is not just a perversion of Judaism. It was built at the expense of the indigenous Palestinian population, at the expense of the Jews who lived in Palestine before they came, and at the expense of the Jews around the world. It's embarrassing to us to watch them oppress the Palestinian people in our name. They are desecrating the name of God in the name of our holy Torah. It is painful to see them dirtying the Holy Land with their intolerable behavior. Authentic Jews and their leaders, since the creation of the State of Israel until the present, have been completely opposed to it and have come out in public against them all over the world. The Zionists do not represent the Jewish people and certainly not speak in the name of the Holy Torah. The very name Israel was stolen by them. Authentic Jews around the world demand that the entire land and all rights be restored to the Palestinian people. As Jews, we say that our people will be more safe and our religion more respected under Arabs who believe in God and fear Him than under these heretics, Jews only by birth, who make war against Judaism and humanity. We pray for the speedy and peaceful dismantlement of the State of Israel, and for the time when Palestinians and Jews will once again live side by side in peace and harmony. Ultimately, we pray for the time when we will see the fulfillment of our prayers. May all people join together in one group to do the will of the Almighty wholeheartedly, with the revelation of the glory of the Almighty throughout the universe soon in our days. Amen.
Zafar Bangash is a director of the Institute of Contemporary Islamic Thought and author of several books, including the award-winning title Power Manifestations of the Sara, examining the letters and treaties of the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His latest book is titled The Doomed Kingdom of the House of Saud.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Committed Muslims, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to thank the organizers of this webinar as well as the moderator for giving me the opportunity to be able to share a few words with our participants regarding the significance of Quds Day. Quds Day, of course, has become a global phenomenon despite the fact that we are in a pandemic, yet those of us that observe this day have been able to find innovative ways of observing it, whether virtually or through flying the flag or through car rallies, etc. While we are on the pandemic, let us understand that it has made life even more difficult for the Palestinian people because of the denial of the vaccines to the Palestinians, as well as the increasingly violent attacks by the Zionist occupiers against the Palestinian people, particularly in Al-Quds, in the holy city, in this month of Ramadan. And of course, these attacks have extended to the occupied West Bank, as well as aerial assaults on the besieged Gaza Strip. Thousands of Palestinians have been attacked, injured, or arrested since the beginning of Ramadan. And these horrible scenes that have been witnessed for many weeks now should stir the conscience of any decent human being anywhere in the world. Let's go back to the issue of Al-Quds Day. We know that it was Imam Khomeini rahimahullah who, as far back as 1980, declared the last Friday of the month of Ramadan as Quds Day. Now, there are several points worthy of note. First, the Imam specifically referred to it as Yawm al-Quds, or the Day of Quds. He did not use the name Jerusalem. This is important because this is the name, the official name that has been given to this city by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, Al-Quds is linked to one of the attributes of Allah, which is Al-Quddus, which means the Holy One. So Allah is the Holy One, and this city is the Holy City. And in fact, the whole of Palestine, Ardul Palestine, has been designated as the Holy Land. And this is also, of course, mentioned in Surah Al-Isra or Surah Bani Israel regarding the journey of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam of Isra and Mi'raj on that particular occasion. Now, we know that the Zionists illegally occupied one part of Al-Quds back in May of 1948, and the rest of it in the war of June 1967. So today, the entire city of Al-Quds, and of course the whole of Palestine, is under Zionist occupation. It is quite revealing that not one Muslim ruler or king or sheikh or potentate in the past ever had the courage to draw attention to the illegal occupation of Al-Quds and Palestine and to seek their liberation. Although they talked about the importance of Palestine, but they never ever took any practical steps. Further, we know that in August of 1969, when there was an arson attack on Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and the member was set on fire, there was a major damage done to inside the Masjid Al-Aqsa. All that these so-called Muslim rulers and potentates did was to call a conference in Rabat, Morocco, and they huffed and they puffed, and then they appealed to the international community and the international powers, the imperialist powers, to help them liberate Al-Quds and Palestine and to prevent the Zionists from desecrating the holy places of the Muslims. Now, if we consider that we contrast this with what the Imam did, the Imam actually called for the last Jum'ah in the month of Ramadan to be observed as Yawm al-Quds, and he called upon the Muslim masses. He didn't appeal to the imperialist powers. He called upon the Muslim masses to rise up, to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people, and to strive towards its liberation. So today, in the year 2021, millions of people participate in Quds Day rallies in all parts of the world, from the farthest reaches of New Zealand and Australia in the south, to the farthest reaches in Europe and North America, and to the depths of Africa. Millions of people in hundreds of countries participate in Quds Day rallies, big and small, to draw attention to the illegal occupation of Al-Quds and of Palestine. One of the striking features of these rallies is that they are no longer attended only by Muslims. In fact, there are fair-minded Christians, there are fair-minded anti-Zionist Jewish people that also participate in these rallies because they see the injustices that are being perpetrated in Al-Quds and in Palestine. Even as we speak, the Zionists are aggressively pushing into Al-Quds, and they want to push the Palestinian people that have resided there for generations out of their dwellings. Even the Zionist occupiers' courts are aligned with them. And the Zionists are also making incursions into Al-Haram al-Sharif. We know that since the beginning of Ramadan, when the Palestinians, of course, the Muslims of Palestine go to Al-Haram al-Sharif, and especially to pray in Masjid al-Aqsa, because this is a sacred mosque, they are being prevented from going there. They've been attacked outside the Damascus gate, and they've been tear gassed and beaten up and so on. These troubling developments, in fact, make the observance and commemoration of Quds Day even more important. And we must all, therefore, wherever we are, whether we are in Europe or North America or in the Muslim world, in the Middle East or the Far East or Africa, have an obligation to continue to participate in these rallies to draw attention to the illegal occupation of Al-Quds and Palestine, the Holy Land, and to strive to help its liberation from the clutches of the Zionists. One final point. It's important to remember that the Zionist enterprise in Palestine, occupied Palestine, is a settler colonial project. Just like all colonial projects that were dismantled in the last century, the Zionist project of settler colonialism also has to be dismantled in occupied Palestine, so that all people, fair-minded people, whether they are Muslims or Christians or of the Jewish faith, that want to live as equal citizens under the law would be welcome to live in Palestine as equal citizens, not as one group dominating another, not as one group oppressing another, not as one group stealing the land of the others, so that we may have then ultimately peace and security in that land. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh Jafar Ladik was born in the UK, and from 2005, he has studied at Jamiatul Hawzatul Muntadhir of Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Taqi al-Mudarrisi in Holy Karbala, Al-Mahdi Institute, Birmingham, and the Islamic College in London. He holds a master's degree in Islamic law from the Islamic College London and his dissertation on an Islamic theory of global citizenship. He is an author of many different books, including The Hidden Treasure, The Ways of the Righteous, A Pure Land, Islamic History of Yemen, and A Star Amongst the Stars, a bio of Jabir ibn Abdullah. He is a well-known activist, leading campaigns ranging from support for Palestine to engaging in debates with Islamophobes and white supremacists. Previously, he was the resident alim of Haydari Islamic Center and Hujjat Stanmore in London. He is the incoming resident alim of Babul Ilm Center in Leeds.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلي يا ربي على محمد وآله الطاهرين. Awaited Savior of Humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Imagine a crime so well documented, yet there is still no justice. Imagine a crime seen by the entire world's eyes, yet so many close their eyes to it and so few point it out. Imagine a crime so horrid that was performed upon the very same people 70 years ago, that then immediately turned round and committed the same crimes of genocide upon another. This is the situation in Palestine. In the Holy Quran, chapter number 4, Surah An-Nisa, verse number 148, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages those whom have been oppressed to be able to raise their voices and to be able to shatter the confidence and the security of those who have oppressed them. The verse says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, La yuhibbu Allahu al-jahra bis-su'i min al-qawli illa man zulim. Allah does not love the raising of voices, ones that can cause problems in society, that can shake the comfort of society, illa man zulim, except by the one to whom oppression has been done upon him. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ سَمِيعًا عَلِيمًا. And indeed Allah is all hearing and all knowing. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the encouragement to be able to change the status quo, to allow people who may not have heard of an oppression to hear it. Normally, one of the principles of society is that there is peace and security that reigns. But at times, a people have to be able to break that peace, break that security, in order for their story to be heard, in order to shake people out of the comfort zones that they sit in. In these last few days, only these last few days, let alone months and years, we have seen a blatant increase in the type of exploitation, harassment, theft, colonization, and attacks upon the Palestinian peoples. The whole world's eyes have been focused upon Sheikh Jarrah, whereby settler colonists of the Zionist persuasion have openly been recorded in stating that we are coming to steal your house, that we want the blood of Arabs to be spilt. One was even recorded just a few days ago saying that if I do not steal your house, someone else will. A woman was recorded by saying that we will get them out one way or another and their house will be ours. These kinds of incidents have been recorded decade after decade after decade. But now, in a time in which we no longer need to be able to rely on old media, state media, corporate and corrupt media, you and I become the media. You and I with our social media platforms, you and I with our voices, you and I with our demonstrations, we become the media. We ensure that the world sees what the BBC refuses to show the rest of the world, what the CNNs have refused to show the rest of the world, what the politicians have purposely turned a blind eye to. This was the wisdom of His Eminence, Al-Imam Al-Mujahid, Sayyid Ruhullah Al-Khomeini, Rahmatullahi Ta'ala alayh, who in his foresight, in asking the Muslim and the entire world to come together on the last Friday of every Shahr Ramadan for Al-Quds Day, to make sure that there was a united voice around the world that presented themselves on behalf of the Palestinian cause, which is to be able to return back to their houses and to be able to press charges against those settlers who have thrown them out. In this tradition, you and I have the opportunity to come together and to be able to inform the world that may either be unaware or have closed their eyes towards these tragedies of what exactly has been occurring to the Palestinian peoples. And this video is for you and I to be encouraged by that, to participate in it, to join ranks, and one day, inshallah, to be able to see justice occur for the Palestinian people. Today, we are mourning so many of our brothers and sisters. Either they lie within the dungeons of the illegal, illegitimate, Zionist occupying apartheid state. Many of them lie under the ground. Many of them are in the diaspora. Many of them are internally displaced in countries around Palestine. It is necessary for you and I to remember the goals of Palestine, and that is a one-state solution, and that is for all of the Palestinian peoples to return back to their house, and we will settle for nothing short of this. This is our opportunity in the verse to be able to raise our voices, and whether it be the Jum'ah khutbah that is read out by the Khatib, whether it be the lecturers, whether it be those on the social media platforms, we encourage everyone on this last Friday of Shahr Ramadan to come together and to raise their voice for the Palestinian cause. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the hastening of the appearance of Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjalallahu ta'ala Faraj al-Sharif. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq to be able to witness this victory of the oppressed people wherever they are around the world, and especially the Palestinian cause. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the success of our Shahr Ramadan. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Muhammad wa alihi al-Tahirin. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. From Virginia, United States. It's the Yom al-Quds, a day that the defeat of the arrogance is imminent. For sure it is coming. It's a promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كَانَ حَقًّا عَلَيْنَا نَصْرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, has been and is and will be the victory of the believers. My brothers and sisters that you're listening to me, be sure that you are not a loser, you are a winner. Be sure that the colonialism of the Zionists is over. Be sure that the law of divide and rule that they have created and manufactured with the name of Islam, ISIS, with the name of Christianity of that time, of course, Crusaders, and with the name of Judaism, Zionism is defeated. You can't fool the people all of the time. The lies and fabrications that Israelis are doing, it's finished. This huge bubble that they made, it is punched, and it is over. And no doubt, the Nasr and the victory of the Muslims are coming with the victory of the whole earth. Israel claims that the land is mine. Ask him, what part of the land did you make? Israel claims leadership is ours. Ask him, what did you do to the people of the earth besides killing them, terrorizing them, and creating so much of the mass destructions and then emigrations and leaving the people without the homes? No doubt, today, the stones of the Palestinian has changed to the rockets. No doubt, the rockets of the Palestinian has been blown up and finished. No doubt, we are seeing it, that your houses will be searched one by one. And then we will follow our book. We say, كَانَ حَقًّا عَلَيْنَا نَصْرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that the believers will become victorious. No doubt, it is a promise of Allah. One is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you will be victorious. The other one is that you are saying, well, we believe Allah's power is way above yours. You believe La ilaha illa dollar, we believe La ilaha illallah. Let's see if the dollar is victorious or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You believe that your guns are going to destroy the truth. We say no, the sun will bring the truth up. Let's see who's stronger. You believe that you are going to have the land, leadership, and the wealth of the world belong to you. We say no, everything belongs to Allah, and the law of Allah will govern the earth anyway. After all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the earth. He wants good tenants in it. He wants people that they live with each other. He wants the people that they love each other, not destroying the cities and the humanities and creating so much of migrations. We know that Yom Al-Quds is a day that it will be all over the earth soon. And we know that the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reality, that your houses will be searched and your treacherous act will be returned back to yourself anyway. This blessed month of Ramadan, we are proud of ourselves to say that Alhamdulillah, we are the guests of Allah, and Allah will never mistreat His guests. Mistreat those that are against the guests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Masjid al-Aqsa is the first Qibla, the masjid of the believers. We won't let that to become a terrorist state. We will not allow anybody to take over Masjid al-Aqsa or any part of the land of Allah with corruption. Alhamdulillah that He made us mujahid fi sabilillah, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to recognize the mockeries and the fabrications of the Zionism, and then the believers will become victorious against you people. This is a promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm sticking with it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to know the truth and stay with it, and the falsehood stay away from it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. We represent all people of conscience, all people who care for the well-being of others, all people who value human rights for freedom, justice, and equality. We detest and object to the Zionist propaganda that has infiltrated the lives of Palestinians for well over 70 years now, as well as the lives of millions of oppressed across the world. Should we stand in silence and watch this madness without speaking up? Absolutely not. Number one, we must promote awareness on the suppression that is being carried out on Palestinians, and for that matter, for all of those who are oppressed worldwide. Obtain your information from media sources that are trusted and not from those that are owned and managed by oppressors themselves. We must leverage technology and social media, which we have at our fingertips today. Spread the call for justice far and wide via social media platforms, peaceful protests, petitions, and more. Number two, we support and call for a one-state solution that offers equal rights to Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike. We call for a peaceful dismantling of the Zionist state and a referendum with participation from the Christians, Jews, and Muslims. within the present-day borders of the Zionist state, as well as participation from the Palestinian people within the occupied territories and refugee camps scattered across the region in deciding their fate. We invite all academics and educational institutions to recognize the rights of Palestinians and to re-include Palestine on the world map instead of the Zionist state. Furthermore, we ask all member states of the United Nations to recognize the Palestinian state. We ask the UN to revoke the Zionist state of Israel's membership and to elevate Palestinians' current observer state to a permanent member status. Number 3, we support Palestinian people's God-given right for self-defense during this Israel-Palestine conflict. The Palestinian people are virtually defenseless with no arm, no navy, and no air force. Meanwhile, they're confronted and attacked by the most powerful and advanced military in the region. They have been expelled from their villages and cities for over 60 years now, yet they have displayed resilience in the face of torture and oppression. Number 4, we must denounce the normalization of Israeli occupation, also known as tatbiya in Arabic. Just last year, 4 of the Arab League countries, which included Oman, United Arab Emirates, Sudan, and Morocco, have signed agreements establishing diplomatic relations with Israel. Other countries before them did the same. When are we going to wake up and not sell ourselves cheaply for the sake of personal and materialistic gains? It is our responsibility to denounce this normalization being practiced without shame. Normalizing your relation with an oppressor is showing complicity and acceptance of the status quo. Normalization can only happen with ending the Israeli occupation of the state of Palestine, including Al-Quds, and human rights violators being brought to justice. Number 5, we must abstain from any form of support to the Zionist regime. This includes boycotting products being manufactured by Israel and to participate in the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, which was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2018. Number 6, we condemn the relocation of the US and Guatemalan embassies to the Quds, along with the illegal recognition of the Quds as the capital of Israel, the occupying power. We consider a grave attack on the historic, legal, and natural rights of the Palestinian people and an attack against their legitimate aspirations to attain their freedom and independence. We call upon the new administration to overturn the previous government's mandates. Number 7, we ask for an immediate and unconditional end to the blockade of Gaza and that foreign aid be made freely available to alleviate and eventually resolve the dire human rights crisis in that area. Additionally, we request for access to be given to the COVID vaccine during this global pandemic, which Palestinians have unfortunately been deprived from. Number 8, we demand the return of millions of Palestinian refugees across the world to their home country, which is their basic human right. This also goes for all refugees worldwide who have been compelled to leave their homeland. Number 9, last but not least, we denounce all oppression worldwide and demand the end of oppression, Zionist lobby wars, false flag operations, imprisonments, and torture. We support Black Lives Matter and want justice for all human beings regardless of their race or faith. For Palestine, for Nigeria, Yemen, Syria, Bahrain, Kashmir, Myanmar, and the list unfortunately goes on. No justice, no peace. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
I want to thank all of our speakers today for their wisdom and all the amazing activism that they do. I want all of you to not look at Al-Quds as just one day, this one day that we pick the last Friday of Shahr Ramadan when we speak up against oppression in Palestine. Al-Quds is a mindset. Every waking moment should be spent keeping the needs of those who are oppressed in the forefronts. There's a saying of Imam Hussein alayhi salam that says, those who are silent when others are oppressed are guilty of oppression themselves. Let's always remember the need of those who are less fortunate, and let's always speak up against oppression in any capacity that we can. So before I let you all go, I do want to mention that Muslim Congress has an amazing program for you all. It's also a virtual Al-Quds event that will start at 6:30 p.m. till 7:15 p.m. You can check the program at Muslim Congress's YouTube page. All you have to do is go on YouTube and type in Muslim Congress, and you should be able to watch it. Or another option is to check it out on Zoom. So the Zoom ID for the program is 818-7204-2716. The ID again is 818-7204-2716. And the Zoom password is 313. SubhanAllah, what an amazing password. So please check it out. Today at 6:30 p.m. is when it'll start. It'll be absolutely amazing. Thank you again to all those who watched, and thank you again for all the amazing work you all do.
People running for cover, not knowing whether they're dead or alive.